Hey there everyone, so this is a quick walkthrough of the main functions that we're asking to be covered in the next submission. They are here: layering, masking, the various drawing tools which are incorporated into masking, the different selection options including the magic wand, using basic text and the text function, going through image resolution when it comes to importing and exporting your imagery, and exporting again just basic export settings across the board. So here's an example of using all of those different functions. You can see the basic layout is very similar to Illustrator if you've never used Photoshop before. As we went through layers on Illustrator, it's very similar window down here, just with a good few more options, as it's allowing image manipulation, whereas Illustrator is more vector-based, as we've said. We have a basic toolkit at the left here, and fill and stroke, or foreground and background, whichever you're changing. Unlike Illustrator, because we can manipulate layers directly, as there'll be images most likely. When you have something selected, say selecting on text, the window up here, known as the options window, if you have that ticked, it should be up here. The options window let you change the basic properties of each layer that you have selected. So if you have text, you've got a bunch of text options, including fill, alignment, font size, etc. If you have this selected, this is an image with a mask on top of it, so you can select to show the transform controls, etc., different layer options. Just to cover it quickly, the layer transform controls can also be accessed by Command T, and you can change the transform of this. If you're on Windows, it's Control T. And with that, you can change the scale of the image or layer selected, change the rotation. Again, like Illustrator, if you hold Shift, it uniforms to about 15 degrees. But yeah, that's on rotation. If you're scaling up, you don't have to hold Shift for it to stay uniform. It will do that automatically, and to change this so that we can have complete freedom, then you hold Shift and you can manipulate thusly. So let's release that, pop that there. This is using a mask. This is cut out using the magic wand and various selection tools, etc. So that's what we're going to go through, and this is a piece of text, so that's what we're going to go through. So I'll close this. Yes, I want to save. So for you, for this project, we are going to pop open Photoshop. If it's your first time using it, it's another piece of Adobe Suite. So this introductory screen is very similar to Illustrator and all the other pieces, where you have this suggestion panel and a bit of information. You have your recent works. You have the option to create a new piece or open a new piece. And the various options still at the top here. Again, file, new, etc. So what we're going to do is, for the submission, is create an A4 piece of work. That'll have it fit for print, and that means we'll be working with print dimensions, millimeters. Also, it won't be in PPI, which is for web and digital, as it's pixels per inch. We'll be working in DPI, which is dots per inch, I believe. So we'll create new, and all these settings are boilerplate. We want it A4. International paper is universal paper size. We'll call it example collage 1. The width is in millimeters, the height is in millimeters, as we're working with a physical piece. The resolution is the DPI essentially. That's a set standard for print. That's high for print. That's good for print. That means 300 dots of color of data per inch. And the color mode is red, green, blue, RGB, 8-bit or 16-bit or 32-bit. Standard at 8-bit. With the PNG format, which is what we'll be saving in, that's what the submission is. It's a PNG format. We can have transparent images. We can have data in it that is not bound by a box. So the background contents, we can have it a white background or a black background, a colored background, or a completely transparent background, and then we can subtract various elements from it and have it as a transparent image. So we'll click OK. Now we have our A4 piece of paper. We have our rulers at the top showing us pixels, and we have our layers down here in the bottom right. We only have one layer, our background layer. It's locked. We have our various options, but a lot of these are grayed out and locked because the image, the layer itself is locked. Great. So what we want to do is import a piece of art or a photo or an image into a layer. So I'm going to use this source here. Pexels, another great resource for just image gathering. So this is a collage with a person as the center, a human at the center. So we'll go tattoo person. We'll make it look cool. Tattoos are oh, this bloke. So with the selection tools, we can select an area or a specific color and then subtract that from the image from the canvas. There's a huge range of different settings allowing us to do that. But if it's one single block color, it's slightly easier. The closer the colors are on the edges, etc., mean the different kind of changes we'll have to make. But I'll demonstrate that shortly. So we get our image, and just like Illustrator, we can drag and drop directly in. And there it is. Straight away, we have our bounding box, and we can transform our image in. We can fill it. Again, you don't have to hold Shift for it to stay uniform. And then to place it on the canvas, we press Enter. And that's our image in the center. So as this is an imported piece of art, an imported layer, here in our new layer, this, as we can see, this little version of it, we have a piece of grey paper and a little square. That means it's a smart object. That means it's dynamic. That means it's linked. It's been imported, and it doesn't have editable layer settings yet. What we can do is not on the object, but here on the grey or title, you right click and we have a few options to do what we want to do, but there's lots of options in general. But what we want to do is we want to convert this to a layer. We can do that by converting to layer. We can rasterize the layer. That means to essentially flatten the pixels so that, yes, it's editable, but they're also stuck at a more they'll pixelate the more scale up that we go. We can merge down, which merges this layer and anything below it. Merging the visible takes all of the visible layers and merges them together. Or we flatten the image, which flattens every single layer together. We don't want to do any of those. We want to convert it to a layer so it doesn't affect it in any way or other layers. So now that little icon's gone, we can edit our new layer. So what we'll do is go through these selection options. The first one is we can just select an area of the image. For any manipulation of a layer, we have to have the layer selected. If we want to work on the background layer, that has to be selected. If we want to work on this, Daria Shevtsova, then we click this one. And we can also cut round with these. different options. So I'll show you first this one of cutting out, creating this area, and then backspace deletes that area, or deletes that area, or you can cut that area and then paste that area. Various options, a lot of experimentation, or we can lasso in different contexts. That allows us to simply draw around him. This is all by freehand. This isn't with any useful settings. Drawing around his hair, drawing around his head, and delete that. Lovely. Want it back. Or we can use the magic wand selection or object selection tool. So I'm going to show the main difference between these two. The quick selection tool uses a brush, this teeny tiny cross with a circle around it. That means it's a brush tool. That means you drag it around and then it applies the change, or like a brush, it brushes it. You don't have to hold shift for it to select more of the area. But what we can see here is because of the settings and this color here being very close to this color here, the more we grab, the larger the area it tries to span. So we don't want that. Let's change some of the settings. So on brush tools, as I set up here, the properties for what you're working with change. So we're on this brush of quick selection tool. We can change the settings. We can change the size of the tool. Now it's a bit bigger and now it's a lot smaller. So let's put it around 142. The hardness is how much it tries to grab the area around it, and the spacing is how much it tries to miss an area and jump to the next relevant area. So if I turn up the spacing and hardness, it'll try to grab just about everything. Go a bit more maybe for this example. It's still doing very well. Great stuff. We'll skip this little bit of a demo. So what we want is it to not keep jumping onto his shirt. So turn down the spacing and hardness. Still even more so. There is a way around this. If we have to, let's turn it all the way down, all the way down. Oh, it's grabbing him there. So the alternative method is we can use our magic wand. This is a selection tool that grabs areas instead of painting over them. And the settings up here, there's various settings. Anti-aliasing, that's a very useful setting. That's the pixelation around an image. You're going to use that quite a bit in your life. Not that setting, but the term anti-aliasing, I believe. So if we selected this pink area, it'll grab it all, but it'll also grab other pink areas from the image. It's not what we want. We want it just this pink area. So this is the tolerance. This is how much pink it'll tolerate, or whatever color we're selecting. That's a bit better, but now it's missing out this pink. So maybe 15. Let's try again. Maybe a bit more. Let's try 18. And now it's getting his face again. So what we can do is go back to 15. That grabs all of that. And then if we zoom in a bit to get a bit close and a bit specific, we can go back to our lovely quick selection tool, hold shift, and that'll allow us to grab these areas all together. And then we just select it all whilst the magic wand still has that previous area. Now we've cut off his hand. So before we go too far into it, let's delete. And now we've cut this lovely bloke out. And let's try and get his hand, shall we? Yeah, let's leave it alone for this example. So, following that, we have this blank space all behind him, which is actually a blank area around his transparent area. what we can do to show what I mean is, as per Illustrator and the whole Adobe Suite, when layers are involved, we can uncheck the sight on different layers. So this grey and white squared area is actually an indication of transparency. So if we hide the background, we can actually see that it's a fully transparent area. We can display this even further by going to import a brand new image. We'll go for a flower, random flower. We'll go for, that's a very cool looking image, isn't it? So we'll download this, go back into Photoshop, drag it in. Now we have that as our background. One thing to remember, when we're dragging and dropping images into Photoshop, it will fit them regardless of their original size. It will fit them to the canvas best it can. To have an image at its original size in Photoshop for editing, you want to File and Open. And which one is our newest one? This one. So what that'll do is open it at its original size, and we can see it's much larger here on the ruler than it is after it's been drag and dropped into here. This is about 2,450 wide. This is about 4,100 wide. That's the original image. So again, to scale up, we can Command or Control T on our layer. So just scale it up a bit, and there we are. We've filled the whole thing. The next tool that we're in need of use is the text tool, type tool. So we'll use it as we'll use it as we did in Illustrator. We have the options to horizontal or vertical, or use the vertical and horizontal type tools as a mask. These are the last two options, but we just want horizontal type. Last week I went over lorem ipsum and the usage of that, which will become commonplace for you all. But here's our new type area. So let's just type new. There we are. So when it comes to actually manipulating the text, again, we can double click here, or with type, or with any layer, we can double click on this area of it, and that allows us to manipulate it. Not with this one, because I haven't changed it from a smart object yet. So let's say this one, change the layer styles of that. This one, change the layer style of it, which is the text. So I want to change the color, so I'll have it all selected, get the fill. If you're working with fill or stroke or any sort of color palette in Photoshop, outside of this window, you automatically have a color picker, like the pipette that we had in Illustrator. And I would like this lovely blue. That looks grand. So now we've got that blue. Let's move this new here, and then let's scale up the font size. Let's make it a bit bigger. New. Okay. So what we'll go through now is masking and how to mask a piece. What I'll do is grab a new image. This is quite a nice blue, straight out the gate. Let's use this, download. And import it, jump it straight in. Again, transform it. I'd like it to fit quite nicely. Right now, it's all above our text, so I'm going to bring our text in the hierarchy above everything. So to make this new image, this blue one, a mask, first let's right click on it. Remember the grey, not the image, and convert to layers. Now it's a layer. Again, rasterize is fine. And then down here with this selected, we can create a new layer mask. It's the grayish, light grey rectangle with the dark grey circle cut out. Click, and then we get this new white rectangle on the right hand side of it and a linkage. This white area sits on top but invisibly on this layer. But what the white area indicates is what we can see. If I was to turn this white area black, then it would turn it visible. For example, for a quick show and for future use, if you Command or Control I, that will invert the color of the selected object. So Command I. Now the mask is black, and this is now invisible because the mask of it is black completely. But if we want to show some of it using the mask and its usage, I'll undo that and go back to, let's say this is the first usage of our brush tool. So I'll go to our brush tool. Up here again, the settings completely change. I'm just going to make it a bit larger and a bit more pressure, and then to make the actual color of it affect what we need it to do, we need it to be black. So we'll double click, change it to black, and what we'll actually be affecting is the mask. So now if we just brush it away, brush, 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 brush. So that's an example of using the brush tool. What I may do is create a rectangle. Don't want a rectangle. So the basic shapes are also available here: rectangle, rounded, rectangle, ellipse, polygon, line, and custom shape tool. I'm going to use a cutout on this. I'll create something using our mask. Let's just have that masked like that. So these are now the functions that we need covered in your submission. Let's just really go for it. So these are the functions that you need for the submission. When it comes to saving, again, simply, unlike Illustrator, when we save a file, Illustrator only allows us to save it in Illustrator compatible formats like ESP or PDF or AI for Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, sorry. And we'd have to export it to turn it into an image. Because Photoshop is image manipulation software, we can actually save it with settings and the format of various image formats. We should save the PDF, the PSD, sorry, but for the submission what we need is a PNG, and we can quick export it as a PNG, or we can export as and then select PNG. So export settings are slowly loading. We have the width and the height already preset from what the artboard is. PNG transparency applies because it's a PNG file. PNGs allow for transparency. Various options, and then we'll export it to the relevant place. I'm not exporting this one because it's not very good. And then once you've submitted, we are going to need a folder. I'll create a new folder on this video. Workshop 3. Portrait collage. So that is the example of that is the upload area for this. So again, I just want to 100% cover this. If you need to find the brief or find the submission area, on our chat in Exploring Visual Communication, we go to Files, next to Posts, Files. All of our work in our workshops are in Digital Workshop. Then we have Workshop 1, Workshop 2 and Workshop 3. The portrait collage, and here's the brief for Workshop 3 if you need reference of that. So those are the functions, and that's the upload area. Please do let me know if you need any more help with any of the functions that we've gone over, and I look forward to seeing your work. Thanks.